Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
Welcome to episode 86 of the Industry Angel. As I speak, it's the 12th of April. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the live podcast is very close. It's the 17th at 6 o'clock British Summer Time. We'll be live streaming from Campus North, Newcastle. There are still limited tickets available to be in the audience, so head over to industryangel.com. You can grab one there, they're free. If you're further afield, you'll be able to catch up and watch the footage again on your chosen channel. We'll be on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Just check again, industryangel.com for all the social links. But why not put a reminder in your calendar now? Because if you are further afield, we're live, you can ask us a question live, and in the Q&A session, we may answer it. So if you're going to come on Tuesday, I'm really looking forward to seeing you all, and we'll spend some time after the show to have a chat and see how your businesses are going. If you're watching live, let me know how it's going. Drop me an email maybe after. Tell me if you enjoyed the show. Okay then, let's hear from today's guest. Today we have the CEO of the charity Coco, which is based here in the Northeast. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Lucy Kendall.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So listen, I mentioned charity there. So are you a charity? Is that the right term?
It is the right term, and we are a charity. We have had some discussion about this in the 14 years that I've been at Coco. I have a love-hate relationship with the word charity. People want to support charities, but then I also want us to come across to people as a professional organisation. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a grey area between private and charities, and are we professional or not? And hopefully we are.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I asked, because I don't see that word used as often now. You know, you often see like third sector, and I don't know whether people think it's a term that they don't wish to use now, charity, but that's what you are. So anyway, what's Coco then?
Well, Coco is an international children's charity. We're an international development organisation first and foremost. Essentially, what we do is we build schools in East Africa. It sounds really simple, but it's quite a complex process. We run programs under an umbrella of our Schools for Life project. So we build schools that are sustainable, so they're built out of local materials, but also we try and incorporate solar power, water harvesting, growing crops, lots of different elements, and that's kind of come about over the past few years of working quite closely with partners in East Africa.
So why East Africa then?
Well, it's one of these things. When Coco was first founded, it was founded by Steve Cram, the Olympic athlete, and Jim Panton.
And Sunderland fan.
Yeah, I was going to try and get past that just in case I don't want to ostracize any of the listeners.
He's one of our own.
I know, he is a huge Sunderland fan. But he, back in, I think it was 1998, was asked to go over to Bosnia in the conflict to run a double marathon with a group of soldiers. And he was asked to do that by a great guy called Jim Panton, who is the other co-founder of Coco. And Steve went over there, and I think it was, he might kill me for saying this, but I think it was always his intention to just turn up and run a bit of it and get some, promotion for the cause in Bosnia. But he never thought that he would run, because 2 marathons, quite a long way, and I know he's a long distance runner, but this was kind of after he'd reached his peak physical fitness in the Olympics, and he ended up running the whole way with Jim. And when he turned up there, and there was loads of Bosnian soldiers there with backpacks on and everything, and he had to really. So he and Jim got to talking and thought, this is a great way to raise money for kids who don't have access to education. So that particular run raised money to supply some of the schools in Bosnia that were affected by the war. And I think they just got the bug from there. And in 2000, they founded Coco. And ever since then, it's sort of been, we are a very small, friendly charity. So a lot of the early projects came about because they were projects that had links to the founders. So obviously we did some work in Bosnia because Jim had worked there, and Jim was South African. So a couple of the early projects were in South Africa. And then it kind of shifted from there slightly, and probably quite a lot of that was my fault, because I was over in South Africa doing a master's after I'd been to uni in Sheffield, and I was doing some research at an organisation that was doing some really innovative work with babies that were being abandoned because there's a huge HIV prevalence in South Africa. And I was doing some research on that subject for my master's degree. And I was reading the annual report for this organisation, and in the back it said that one of their funders was a charity called Coco based in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I'm sitting there in a room in Durban on the east coast of South Africa, in the middle of kind of, a shanty town, thinking, hang on a minute, can this be real? So I did a bit of research and got in touch with Coco at the time, and that's how I ended up getting my job as well. But that was because the charity was working in that area. So we started off in South Africa and then gradually moved into East Africa, and always our projects are through word of mouth and connections and networks, basically.
Wow, I love that story. Serendipity.
I know. It was quite interesting actually, because I was doing my research, and I'd hired a car for the weekend to go and do some research in some quite really poverty-stricken areas of Durban, but also really incredible places. And I was driving through, and I got stuck at some traffic lights, and a van pulled up next to me like a people carrier, and it had this logo on the side of it. And I thought, I recognise that logo. Where have I seen that before? And it was playing on my mind for ages. And then it just came to me, a bit like when you get a song in your head and you can't get it out. And then it just all of a sudden came to me. I was like, I've seen that logo in our kitchen at home. And so the next time I spoke to my mum, I said, is there something at home that's got a logo on it that says Coco? And she said, oh yeah, it's that shot glass we've got. We went to some charity event, something to do with Steve Cram. It was an Oktoberfest. So my mum and dad had been invited to one of the charity events in like 2002 or something. And this was a year later, and I was in South Africa, parked next to a van that had the exact same logo on it, which was but there was a couple of things that made it feel like the right thing to do, that made me write an email to them and say, can I come and work for you, please?
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. So when you said work, did you volunteer first, or was it straight into a job?
Well, I asked them if there were any jobs, and they said no, and not one to be turned away. I said, I'll come and work. I'll come and volunteer. I'm back in the UK in December, and I'm working in a call centre, so I can come and volunteer. So I remember getting an email back from Jim saying, by volunteer, do you mean work for free? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, brilliant. When can you start?
When can you start?
So I did, and I came back from Durban, and I remember having a really good meeting with Jim. And again, just people do business with people, and as soon as I met Jim, I just felt at home, and that he got where I was coming from. And they asked me to kind of do like an assessment of all of the projects that we're working on at that moment in time. So I did that whilst working at a call centre at Balliol Business Park. And then on my 24th birthday, they asked me to come in for an interview. And I remember it being the scariest thing I've ever done, because it was at the Eversheds offices in Newcastle, which are quite impressive. And we went upstairs, and there was these 4 men sat around a massive boardroom table there to interview me, and it was really scary. And I walked out of there, and they offered they offered me basically my dream job. So I went home to my mum and dad and I said, Coco have offered me this job for not very much money. And the call centre have offered me a promotion to do this job for a little bit more money. And I remember my mum saying, take the money, take the money.
Oh, did you?
And dad was like, follow your heart, pet. And as usual, I listened to my dad.
Yeah.
I followed my heart and probably not my head, but it was obviously the best decision that I ever made.
Oh, that is great. So, I asked about volunteers, and do the business take volunteers now then?
Yes, we certainly do. They are a massive part of what we do. There's 3 full-time members of staff at Coco at the moment, myself, Holly and Jess. Both Holly and Jess were volunteers and now full paid members of staff. And we have we take about a dozen students from Newcastle University every year. They do what's called a career development module, where they have to come and do 70 hours volunteering in a local business. And actually, I don't think there's many businesses have got the time to kind of nurture them and give them, the time that's needed. But it seems to work really, really well at Coco. So we've got a very good volunteer program set up now because of that. And if we didn't have those dozen volunteers from the university, we'd really struggle, because that massively increases our human resource capacity. And it gives them a really good experience as well. They get quite a lot of autonomy because we need them to, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I asked you there about the business, and of course, it's not a business, but I guess you have to run it like a business. Yeah, I mean, it's the lifeblood, isn't it, of a charity, the kind of income that you bring in. So, how does that look like? How do you bring that money in?
Well, we do quite a variety of things. I know it's been really difficult for a lot of charitable organisations lately because there's been so many cuts, but in a way, we're quite lucky because we've always diversified our income. So we get a lot of it from corporate support, we get a lot of it from individual support, and there's local schools, and we get the odd grant, but that's not been something that we've relied on in the past. So that's quite new to us, is like writing to people and saying, please will you give us £20,000 to build this library or something like that. So a lot of the things that we do are events to raise funds, and we try and do quite a lot of those in the project sites. We know not everyone can take part in them, but some of our most successful fundraising initiatives have been climbing Kilimanjaro or cycling across Masai Land, and doing something where you can go and do a challenge and then go and see the project afterwards and see where your money's gone. So that's a huge part. And there's kind of a mixture of business and individuals that get involved with that, because someone might get involved from a business and then the business will get on board and support. And a lot of businesses nowadays are doing matched funding, which is brilliant, because if somebody from, say, Barclays Bank or Lloyds Bank take part in one of our events, the bank will then match whatever they raise, which is really good. And it's a great sign that businesses are starting to do that. But a lot of the time we will target businesses, but it ends up being a couple of people within that business that might take part in our challenges. And obviously, being founded by Steve Cram, a lot of the stuff we do relates to running. So we have a few places in the Great North Run, in London Marathon, and over the past few years we've been involved with Sunderland, I think and so there's been lots of different running events. So quite a lot of that comes from individual people. In fact, there's a great organisation here in the Northeast called Three Motion Media. I met them through the Northeast England Chamber of Commerce a few years ago, and we got to talking, and they ended up doing an animation for us, which was absolutely amazing, to try and explain to people what it is we do. And I got on really well with Neil. And this year I said, I think it's time for a new animation. And he said, great, we'll do a new one for you. Can we have a few places in the Great North Run? So it works out really, really well that we can do that. And Three Motion are raising money for Coco, and we're getting a world-class animation done to promote our cause in return. So those kinds of things work really, really well.
Yeah, I love that barter industry. It's great. And it's amazing. And I love that support as well, because, we all love to support things that kind of we believe in, and like, as you said at the start there, you're a small kind of family feel charity, and it feels really nice because you can see where them, like, I know you can't see where the money goes because it's overseas, but you can see the passion that your charity has. I mean, you know that I haven't been involved with you guys for many a year now, and it just feels so nice.
Yeah.
Some of those companies often now have got like CSR policies. So have you seen a lot more companies wanting to come on board and work with you, or?
I do think that it's on the increase, but I think a lot of that is because I actively go and look for it as well.
Okay.
I mean, we've been really lucky. I fully believe that where we don't make millions and millions, but where we do make money is where we've got a really good relationship with someone. And that's usually a personal relationship. So it's usually a relationship that Steve or one of the board members might have with somebody or me. And we were talking about this the other day. There's a payroll organisation in Gateshead called Sintra Payroll, and their CEO was mad keen on Coco for quite a long time, and he did quite a lot of running events for us. And when I asked him why Coco, he was like, I like the colour of your running vests. So that was what started it. And he said, that's what attracted me. But then what's kept me there is the relationship that I have with all of you guys. And Carsten is quite well known in the Northeast. And I think he won't mind me saying he's a little bit like Marmite. But the reason that he's like that is because he's incredibly passionate about business. And he put forward that Coco should have their payroll done by Sintra as part of their CSR, which
Excellent.
is incredible for us. And it's something relatively easy for them because they're doing thousands of people's payroll. So to do 3 people's payroll at Coco once a month isn't actually that big a deal, but it is massive. It saves me hours, which means that I can be doing something better with my time. And then he's got really involved with doing a cycle challenge. And now every year we do a coast to coast or a coast and castles. I think this year he's chosen the Hadrian Cycle Challenge route this year, always in September. And it's usually the weekend after the Great North Run, and he does the Great North Run too. So he's absolutely awesome. But his team have now got on board with that as well. So it's not just the CEO, but it's the rest of the company. But I think that CSR can only be successful if it's embedded in the leadership. And sometimes you see organizations where people a little bit further down the hierarchy might be mad keen on doing stuff for charity, but they can't get it up to the big bosses. And it's great to see that more of that is happening. And I think the Northeast is really good at that, actually.
That's a really good point. Lucy, what I'd like you to do is just for some of our listeners is to just talk about some of your projects, because I think you kind of mentioned a couple of schools and things, but let's take a deep dive. So what does that actually look like? What's the logistics behind the whole thing?
Well, we always work in partnership with organisations. So it was probably back in 2007 that we started up one of our first projects in Tanzania. And it came about through a link through Durham University. And I went over to a place called Songea, which is in deepest, darkest Tanzania, right off the beaten track. I think my bus journey was 14 hours or something. It was absolutely horrendous. Where I met this great guy called Oswin, who was trying his best to get kids into school. And there were a number of different challenges. But the major one was that there weren't actually enough schools. So there might be some government schools in existence, but they could be sort of 3 or 4 hours walk away for many communities, one of which was the community that Oswin was born in. And Oswin is like a diamond that we found in Tanzania. He's been a huge part of our success in reaching people in East Africa. So the first thing we did was he wanted to build a school. And I said, there's loads of buildings around, let's renovate something. It'll save us loads of money. And after a bit of humming and hawing, he said, oh, okay then. So we renovated a tobacco factory, and now it's the best school in the region. And it has been for the past 5 years out of 184 schools. And it's because the school is fit for purpose. It's got classrooms that aren't made of metal, so they're not like little ovens for kids to sit in. It's got ventilation. They've got solar power on the roof so they can study at nighttime and they can use computers. They've got access to food, so they all get fed at lunchtime, so they don't get sleepy and fall asleep at their desks in the afternoon. So, and we've all got great teachers, because everybody knows there'll be somebody that's had, like, I've had great teachers who've led me to where I am, and we really believe in making sure that the quality of education is really good. So we did that once and we thought, right, this has worked, so let's do it again and again and again. And we launched our Schools for Life project about 4 years ago now, and since then we've got 13 projects that we're working with across East Africa at various different levels of completion. Hodja Secondary School is our kind of shining light. That's the tobacco factory that we renovated, and it's closely followed by 2 or 3 schools that are competing with it to be the best in the region. And then we're doing more and more of that in Kenya and Uganda. So the idea is that we go in, we work with a community, we turn a school around, and we make it financially sustainable. And then when we've got to that point, we leave, but we leave carefully. There's always an exit plan. Don't want to leave them worse off than when we started. But that's kind of it in a nutshell, and it seems to be working. Every school's different, but basically what they need is a little bit of investment to get them kick-started and make sure that we build really good structures that aren't going to fall down in a couple of years' time, and make sure that the kids have access to power and safe passage to school as well. There's huge issues with girls having to walk for hours and hours on end to get to school. So a lot of the time we have to build dormitories, but the quality of education that those girls then get is incredible. So that's what we've been doing for the past 5 years, and we're just going to keep on doing it because there's demand everywhere, and the results are showing that the kids are passing, they're able to go on to higher education and ultimately get jobs and not live in poverty.
That's honestly, I love that. I was just dreaming away there, listening to it. I could picture it in my mind, and it's such a lovely legacy. So what I did hear was that sustainable. So when you guys exit, they're able to keep the place running. How does that work? How do they do that? How do they fund it?
Well, we do lots of different things. It always comes from the community. So we'll sit and talk about ideas together. We often laugh at the fact that there's no word that means maintenance in Swahili. So Oswin and I often talk about that, and it's really important. I think a lot of the reasons that some projects in parts of the developing world fail is because nobody takes into account the fact that they need to be looked after. So we've done various things. I think one of the best things we ever did was Oswin said to me, if we buy a photocopier, we will be able to make this school self-sustainable. This was a school for like 200 kids. And I was like, I don't quite follow. So he talked me through it and worked out that there's a cluster of schools in this rural part of Tanzania, and they all have to travel into town to copy exam papers. The government in Tanzania give you one exam paper, and then you have to copy it for all your students. So suddenly the cost of photocopying has increased massively because you need to take a bus for an hour to get to town and photocopy them. And Oswin saw this as a really great idea, and it was unbelievable. It brought in like £3,000 in the first year, which was unprecedented for Tanzania. And since then, he's come up with lots of wild and wonderful ideas, and we thrashed them out together. Not all of them are great. Some of them need a little bit of work, but in some of the places we've got, we let the community use the IT facilities in the evening or on the weekends, and they pay a small amount of money to do that. So that creates a bit of income. There's a huge, the majority of the parents of the kids that we're working with are agriculturalists. So there's loads of farmers in the area, and making sure that those farmers are getting the most out of their land means that the parents can afford to contribute to the school. So we don't just build the schools, we work with the communities as well. So we do two things to help increase the economic well-being of people in the area. We do sustainable agricultural training, and we do small loans program. So if people have got an idea for a small business that they want to try, there's a committee set up and they have to go and pitch their idea. So it's kind of like Dragon's Den, and they go and pitch their idea to a group of Tanzanian business people, a bit of a mixture of business people and local community members. And they'll pitch the idea, and if they're successful, they'll get a small loan. And we've given out over 3,500 loans now, and 2 haven't been repaid. And so we're really confident that this, and it does work, it really works. People can, they started out being loans of as little as £20. And a couple of years ago, I met one of the women who'd been given a loan for £20. Her name's Rukia, and she opened a small restaurant, and she did it because she wanted her own business and to have control over her own life and to send her own kids to school rather than relying on aid or support for somebody else. And she turned this around with just a loan of £20, and now she has her own home, she sends her child to school, she's got her own business, she's got respect in the community, she feels empowered. So it's really great to do that. And it means that the whole area then becomes better off, so they can afford to send their kids to school and pay a certain amount of money towards paper, books, pencils, pens, whatever's needed.
It's such an entrepreneurial continent as well. I've got a bit of a fascination actually with Africa at the moment. It's I've noticed a lot more listeners are listening from countries such as Kenya and Nigeria, and it's really interesting. I get quite hung up on the stats, and I get a bit nerdy, and I kind of watch where the listeners are coming from, and I'm really getting excited that Africa are starting to listen to podcasts now, and I've started to try and reach out a little bit more on social media to try and engage a little bit and see what projects are happening. So I'm really glad you've shared that with us. I knew if I dug a little bit, I'd get some good stories out of you. So, Lucy, thinking about you and the charity, before we started there, I said, am I okay to call you CEO? And I said, check you out, CEO. And because I love that. I love, and and I've spoken about this before about women in business. How is this for you? So you're a CEO of the business, I keep saying business, of the charity. No,
I'm happy with business. Business is great.
How do you see any challenges as a woman CEO in this particular space, or is it all fine?
I think, to be honest, the majority of the times that I've sort of been aware of my gender in my role has been when I'm in East Africa, and more for like cultural reasons. I remember when I was going to do some research with a Maasai community that we're about to start working with. A volunteer photographer had come over to Tanzania with me, and we walked into this Maasai hut to have a conversation about what we're going to do with the project. And everybody looked at Rob and spoke to Rob. Wow. And thought that Rob was in charge and Rob was making the decisions because he was the man. And so it has been, something that I've had to, but also my age as well. I started this job at 24, and being 24, white and female, trying to run a project in East Africa was actually quite tricky because I had no life experience and therefore didn't know what I was talking about. So that has been difficult. But I do think that I've never really looked at being a woman in business in the Northeast as something negative. But I think it's probably because I'm acutely aware that it shouldn't be. Yes. And that comes from working directly alongside a chairman who is a huge advocate for. Steve's always given me, a lot of autonomy to do the right thing and to run the charity in the best way possible. And a lot of that's about trust. But the reason that I remember that we decided to change my title because I can't remember what I was before. I was managing director, I think. And we were struggling because everyone would want to meet Steve. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I wasn't as important. And I think that's a little bit to do with the fact that I'm a woman, but it's a lot more to do with the fact that I'm not Steve Crabb. But it kind of gets frustrating for both of us because Steve does a lot for the charity, but I can do more. I'm paid to do more. I want to be in those meetings and get into that room. So it was a kind of executive decision. I'm CEO and I've got 2 other full-time members of staff in a relatively small business, but it opens those doors, it gets you into those meetings, and hopefully once I get there, I don't under-deliver. But I'm very lucky to have a really good board of directors around me. Again, a group of volunteers who, don't get paid to sit on the board, but do a huge amount to kind of give me leadership support, mentorship, a lot. Not to mention gorgeous free offices from Board Hadaway on the quayside.
Oh, nicely plugged. So listen, before we go, what else is happening? What does the future hold? Have you got anything in the pipeline that we might need to know about?
Yeah, well, we're really busy at the moment. We've got a new event this year, which is quite exciting. We get quite a lot of support from a company called Cruise and Maritime. They do cruises from the Port of Tyne, and they've given us cruises for the past 3 or 4 years at our ball and our golf day to auction off. And again, great relationship. And they said, what about doing an event on a cruise ship? So on the 2nd of June, which happens to be my husband's birthday, so he knows what he's getting for a present, a ticket to our cruise luncheon. So we're having a 5-course lunch with cocktails. And it's on a Saturday as well. So we don't usually do events on a Saturday, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But we've already sold a few tables, but that's my mission at the moment, because we're gonna the cruise ship's gonna be I want to say parked up, but I know that's the wrong.
I knew you were trying to choose your words wisely then. I couldn't even help you because I didn't either.
It's going to be at the Port of Tyne on the 2nd of June, so we're going to have a really fab lunch event and hopefully raise some money for our projects. There's a primary school that we're working with in Kenya, and it's recently suffered some damage from the community built some classrooms themselves, whilst they're waiting for us to raise enough money to build some for them. So we're trying to raise some funds to build some suitable classrooms at Mersey Primary School. So hopefully that'll help with that one. And then there's our golf day as well. I think you might have been on the evening one year, Ian. So we have our golf day every year up at Slaley Hall, and it's on June the 28th this year. So selling teams to, again, this is where local business comes in. And we're really lucky because a lot of supporters are very loyal and they come back year on year, but trying to make that a really great event and something a bit different. So those are the big things at the moment. And then we've got a new cycle challenge in Kenya in September, taking part in and around the areas of Lake Victoria. So, and that'll involve a visit to some of our projects too. So there's plenty going on.
There is indeed. And if you're interested, you go to coco.org.uk.
That is perfect.
There you go. Now listen, I'm not going to play golf because if I can't pick it up or if I can't kick it, there's no point in me getting. So I have been to the golf. It was nice, but I didn't play it. Just had the evening there. It was lovely. So
yeah.
So thank you very much. Listen, I love you guys. Lucy, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you well.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'll speak to you soon.
That was our friend Lucy Kendall there. So I've known Lucy and Coco for many years now. And as I mentioned, they're such a warm and inspiring professional charity. They do some amazing work. And I hope that gave you a flavour of the type of legacy that a charity can leave. I also felt it was important to ask about the challenges that a charity can face in terms of fundraising, because it's important to achieve the income to do such projects. So if you don't have a chosen charity that you work with, have a think, have a look around. It really helps bring something special to a company. When I worked with Coco and the team, we annually ran the Sunderland 10K, for instance, and it was special to share that with colleagues and know that we were supporting such fantastic projects. So if you work with a charity, let me know how you support them. And if you work for a charity, I'd love to know how it's going for you. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer. This is the Industry Angel. Thanks for listening.